Howdy guys, Bookie Laura here. I had intended to film a completely different video today, but when I logged on to Twitter at the end of the day when I got home, I saw that the most exciting thing had happened. The Goodreads Year in Review 2017 was ready to roll, so I went straight on to Goodreads and now I'm going to share with you what are my stats for the year. Now, if you're not aware, I am completely obsessed with Goodreads. I use it to track all my reading, and at the end of every single year they produce this really nice sort of, I think they call it an infographic, where it has sort of stats and facts about all the books that you have read that year, and I love it. And actually, it's one of the first videos that I did when I started on BookTube was my Year in Review 2015. I did last year 2016, and I'm very excited today to bring you 2017's Year in Review. Now, actually, on the face of it, the facts are really simple and straightforward. They don't do anything really complicated, but I still enjoy, I think I just enjoy tracking things. I enjoy tracking things anyway, and obviously I love to read, so I think the two come together just beautifully, and it makes me very, very happy. The first stat that it tells me, and I have them all here on my iPad, you can see all the beautiful, beautiful pictures, is that I read this year a grand total of 21,282 pages across 72 books. Now, I think on the face of it that number means nothing, but actually I have used it to compare previous years. Before I started on BookTube, I was reading about 10,000 pages a year on average, and then that went up significantly last year. I think it was, let me not lie, I think it was 16,000? Yeah. So last year I read 16,133, so it's increased even more, which I'm absolutely delighted about, but not surprised. I think that I am reading more than ever, so to read 21,000 pages now gives me a sort of page aim for next year. One fact that I thought was really, really interesting was that I went back to watch my video from last year to see how my stats compared, and last year on Goodreads I set myself the target of reading 24 books, but when it came to the Year in Review being produced I had read double that at 48. This year I set the target of reading 36 books, but when the Year in Review came out, I have read 72, which for those of you who aren't good at maths, is double 36. Like, I don't know whether that's just me that's impressed with that kind of coincidence, but to have read double my target both years at the same point, I think is quite interesting. Anyway, moving on. The shortest book which I read was Quidditch Through the Ages at a mere 64 pages, so very, very short, and I read that quite recently. And the longest book which I read was The Passage by Justin Cronin, which was 766 pages. Really, again, really interestingly, last year the longest book wasn't quite as long as this one, but was a hefty 600 and something, and I'd found it to be quite a hard work, and I'd found a similar thing again this year. So there is definitely a pattern, I think, that I find longer books quite hard work. On average, the average page length of the books I was reading was 296 pages, which is a little on the short side because I think generally they're 300 to 400, but having read a lot of Shakespeare this year, I think that's probably reduced it because obviously plays are quite short, so I don't know. It then tells you which are the most and least popular books that you have read. Now this is based on how many people on Goodreads claim to have read it, so it's not based on ratings or scores or anything like that. So the most popular book I have read this year was Romeo and Juliet, with a whopping 1.8 million people on Goodreads having read it. And then the least popular, and this is quite a dramatic difference, was The Amazing Tale of Ali Pasha, which is a children's book that I read quite recently, that only had 34 people. 34? That's not even like quite small, that is minute. And I guess it's because it's a children's book, and it's not even middle grade, it is a children's book, and lots of people I suppose on Goodreads wouldn't necessarily register that. I know I don't typically, it was only because I read it for work that it registered at all, otherwise I wouldn't have included it. So my average rating for 2017 was 3.7 stars. Now I remember moaning on last year because I think it was 3.4, and I was disappointed because it felt like that was barely above average, whereas actually 3.7 means that most books, you know, more books were 4 or 5 stars than anything lower, and I think that is cool because that's what you want. You want reading to be a really positive experience, so I hope to continue with that next year and keep reading books that I think I'm going to want to read rather than books that I feel I should read and then don't enjoy. The book which I have read, which has the highest rating, is The Hate You Give. It has a rating on Goodreads of 4.6 on average, which is quite astonishing. I gave it 5 stars, so I'm not surprised. But I think that I think even if you don't enjoy the story, you're very supportive of the message it's trying to portray, and yeah, and the themes that are going on. So I can see why that has such high ratings. It then gives you, which I really like, a kind of like, it gives you the covers of all the books that you've read, which I think is really cool to just scroll through and see all the books that you've read this year. I quite enjoy looking back and being nostalgic. Although I must admit that I've had the best reading year ever and I've only read 72 books. And then I look at the amount of books that I want to read and I think, wow, I'm not going to be alive long enough to read all the books I want to read. And that's quite a frightening thought, really. Anyway, moving on. So anyway, I'm really excited to have my Goodreads year in review. I hope that you are too. I hope that this isn't too dull and boring for you. I'm not going to talk through all of the books that I've read. 72 of them is quite a lot. However, I am going to do some videos based around, my favourite books that I've read this year. So look out for those. If you use Goodreads, then do let me know your stats or do a similar video and I would love to check it out because I like to, compare. It gives you a sort of a basis for comparison and I quite enjoy statistics. I am a bit of a nerd about data. I don't apologise. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.